I thought I would do a bit of a sort of precursor video really to a future video that I'm going to do as part of my sort of request hit list, and it's the next video that I was going to do, and not necessarily the next one I was going to put on YouTube, but certainly the next one I was going to choose from my previously discussed hit list video list for YouTube, was a God Almighty review come Christ knows what video on all of the scalers that I've got. It was requested by FutureMat 5. It was basically go through all my plethora of scalers. You know, let's get back down to roots and, you know, discuss scalers and scan lines and all that good shiz. So yeah, that was going to be one of my future videos, or certainly my next future video from my hit list list of videos. And as I said, as a precursor to that video, whenever that video happens, I have been still collecting further devices of the scalar variety, and actually something else as well, which I will undoubtedly discuss in a future video. But all electronic gizmos and all that good stuff. But this video is actually about something called the HDBOXPRO, which is this little beauty here. You may have remembered that I mentioned on, I think it was actually on the video that I did discussing the eBay CGA EGA to VGA scaler, which is what I have used and reviewed for use for the SLG 3000. This little baby here. This is the cheap. This is the cheap solution really to scaling, and it has its pluses. It has its pluses and its minuses. I will save those specific comments for the overall scaler review video that I do. But this device here was actually based on another scaler, which was called the HDBOXPRO, with some clear differences. Now, this isn't actually a proper HDBOXPRO, but it is, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. It will sound a bit confusing. The HDBOXPRO board, the scaler board that's used, has been used since by other manufacturers that basically rebrand it. So this is a rebranded HDBOXPRO. It's a bit weird actually. I bought this second hand, but the actual box itself says HDBOXPRO on it. There you go. And the actual scaler is called a HD Gaming Pro, but it's actually made by a company called Kusys, who sell this device in the UK, and it's not particularly cheap. I think they're about £60–70 in the UK, direct from Kusys, which I actually think are a UK company. I could be wrong there, but they've certainly got UK price and everything on the website, so I can only assume that they're a UK company. Now, why you would have a Kusys device, which is clearly labelled on the back, Kusys, that is a version of the HDBOXPRO in a box that says HDBOXPRO, you'd have thought that would say Kusys and the name of what they call their scaling unit, but it's not a rip-off, it's not a copy, it is the same board, and it's just been licensed out to another manufacturer. So whether or not I'm not sure whether this box is the correct box that I've got, but it's what it was delivered in. You're probably thinking, why have you bought this if it's basically the same as your eBay scaler that you've got, you know? And they are good scalers for what they are. You know, you've got to consider the price. And the only reason I bought this was because it was extremely cheap. I got this for a virtually giveaway price. I wouldn't have bought it else because I have utterly no need for this. But it cost me £15 delivered. Now, like I said, these the actual HDBOXPROs, yeah, I've said that right, HDBOXPROs, I have to double check the box there, from Japan or Hong Kong, about $50, I think, $50–60, but obviously by the time you've paid for shipping, etc., they can get quite dear. So the Kusys solution is perhaps where the price increase is, because it is the same actual box, because you can buy these from Kusys online. And again, I said I think they're about £60–70 in the UK shipped. So what's the difference between that device, apart from the obvious, the fact it's got a nice case, and this device here? The big difference, they've both got their pluses and minuses. And the big difference on the HDBOXPRO device is the fact that you can only have, or it's only got component inputs, which is a bit of a limiting factor. You can't input any 15 kilohertz signal via VGA, D-sub, or via a jammer connector, or via an additional header loop, which is what you can do on these devices. So you'd immediately think that actually this device isn't as good. It's dearer than this device. You know, this device you can pick up for £25 to £50 on eBay in the UK. Depends on where you get it from and what type of board that you get, because there are two versions of that board available. So this one's dearer, and you've only got a single type of input on it. So this is only any good for people that have PlayStation 2s that have got component output on them. It'll work on the Xbox with component, it'll work on basically anything with component. It will handle 240p images, even though it does treat them as 480i, but it's irrelevant, to be fair. But you are restricted on the input. So this will work with Wii, for instance. I mean, another good thing about this device, there's actually two good reasons to buy this over and above this device, assuming that you don't need the additional input times. One is the fact that this will actually scale up to 1080p, whereas this one won't. It'll only go up to, I think it's 13 something by 7 whatever, so it goes up to equivalent basically up to 720p widescreen mode. This will go up to full 1080p. So in theory this will be slightly, and it is ever so slightly sharper at scaling. If you've got a 1080p screen, the image is slightly sharper with this because you can scale right up to 1080p. So it's slightly better for that. And the other key thing is that this box has, on the menu system, it does look very similar to the menu system on the eBay scaler, but it's actually got less options, but it's the same kind of font that's used on there, the same thing you do as regards to scrolling through, etc. But there's less main menu options, but there are some more additional options within each option, if that makes sense. And one of those is something called it's called motion adaptive deinterlacing. I think that's what it's called. But basically what it enables you to do is that some games, some retro games, 240p games, if you think of, there's quite a few Mega Drive games that do this, certainly PlayStation 2 games. If you look at something like Espagaluda, on Espagaluda, when you're scrolling, on the enemy ships they have shadows, and those shadows should look like shadows, i.e. they don't flicker or they don't get crazy lines through them. Now this device here does actually show what they call deinterlacing errors on those shadows, so those shadows don't show correctly. With this device they will, and they will correctly show, and they're called 30 kilohertz shadows, and it's a specific video effect that is apparent in some games, and with those games, without the right form of deinterlacing, you'll get what is known as errors. Deinterlacing errors are artifacts. Like I said, this board here itself will show those deinterlacing errors. There's various other games, like fighting games as well, some 480i PlayStation 2 fighting games, but it's, I mean, to me it's not a massive showstopper. but it is something you can correct with the right device. And obviously some of the other devices that I've done various discussion videos on, well, majority of them do correctly deinterlace, and you don't get those issues. But obviously they cost a lot more and they're a lot bigger devices. So this device here is very good in that way, in that it will enable you to actually upscale to a much higher resolution. You know, if you've got a full HD screen, a 1080p screen, you can upscale to that native resolution. And also you've got this motion adaptive deinterlacing setting on here, which will ensure that any deinterlacing that's done will be correct. So your 240p image that you feed this, although you are limited to what you can feed into it, obviously, like I said, really that's only relevant for the PlayStation 2, because everything else will be 480p on component normally, or you got 480i as well, yeah. But it will correctly deinterlace all those appropriate signals. So yeah, it's. I mean, if you've got one of these already, and you have with this an SLG 3000, that will mask the deinterlacing errors to a massive degree. In my opinion, it's not an issue. Yeah, okay, this device can be slightly sharper as regards to its scaling capabilities if you've got a 1080 screen, but you know, you're not talking a massive amount. You know, but this device looks better. You know, it's in a nice case. So perhaps if you had a Wii, for instance, you know, I mean, that is a current gen console in effect, and it's got component output on it. So if you wanted something to look nice, you'd get a HDBOXPRO or a clone of a HDBOXPRO, and it will work really nice with a Wii. It will take a 480p signal, and you'll be able to upscale it to 1080p, and it should do a lot better than your screen can do. You know, your TV scaler can do. Should. I can't guarantee that, because some TV scalers are good, some are pretty poor, most of them are pretty mediocre, but this should be a lot better than most TVs. So that's about it really. There's very little point in me actually showing you this working. You won't be able to see the difference in quality between the two scalers on a YouTube video. Something worth mentioning as well is that you have got a VGA pass-through on this at the front, so you could connect a PC to it to go to the same monitor. And obviously, because it's a VGA out, you've only got VGA out on this. Means it is fully compatible with the SLG 3000. But obviously, to work effectively with the SLG 3000, you've got to set the output on this to 640 by 480, so it's a 480p image. So you're basically going to halve that, make it 240 for the retro game, you know, PlayStation 1 game for instance, or certain PlayStation 2 games being processed on the PlayStation 2 console. It will work with that, with the SLG. Yeah, so that's about it. It's I mean, if you can get one cheap enough, and they do pop up on the forums occasionally. Like I said, I mean, that was an absolute steal, and for 15 quid I had to buy it for £15 delivered. But normally I wouldn't have bought that, because I just don't. I really don't need it. But certainly if you've got one of these and you do use it with an SLG 3000, don't feel that you're going to be cheated in any way, and don't feel that you've got to go out and buy one of these, because you are, in my opinion, you're wasting your money to a degree, unless you're absolutely anal about the video and you want it to be deinterlaced absolutely 100% correctly, and you're only using it for anything component wise. But these are a bit more flexible. It's a shame that these didn't have the firmware version that these have, and I can't see no reason why they couldn't have put and the different firmware on these boards, because this would have made them absolutely bang on really for that. But you know, so yeah, I hope that was of interest to you guys that have possibly heard of the HDBOXPRO. Certainly for the guys that have asked me about a Wii scaler, what to do if I've got a Wii. You've still got the option of doing that or using one of these, because these have obviously got component inputs on them. But if you want a neater solution that will be slightly crisper in theory on its upscaling, then use a HDBOXPRO or one of the clones that are available. Hope you enjoy the video. Speak to you again soon.